It is 5:01 p.m. and you are inside the No Proscenium Discord. That means on a Wednesday, that means it's time for Review Crew because 5 p.m. Pacific. I am Noah Nelson. I am your acting host for this week, filling in for Kevin Gossett, who didn't see any of the stuff this week, so he's tapping out because he doesn't want to be part of the conversation and get spoiled. He will be back in a special segment next week with Laura Hess, who are going to do their take on Arcane, the Secret Cinema installation that is here in Los Angeles right now. So Laura will be tapping out after the first segment. I've spoiled that Laura is here. Let me say who else is here. Joining us from Chicago.
Hey everyone, it's Patrick McLean.
Joining us from Rhode Island, right? I got that. It says in the thing.
It does say in the thing, and yep, I'm in Rhode Island. It's Leah Davis, your New England correspondent.
And our special guest tonight, also here in Los Angeles, and who did an entirely different part of Arcane from what I did, which is one of the reasons why it's so notable, is...
Hi, Jenapher Zheng, here in LA.
All right. Listen to those tones. She's doing a lot of audio work these days, so like your voice just keeps getting smoother and smoother.
Oh, okay. Nice. Thank you.
We got two segments for you tonight. We're going to start off talking about Savage Hall, which is an online show, an experience and game, a group effort. Who's on point for this one? Leah, is it you? Is it Patrick? Is it Laura? Because you all three did it.
Yeah, it was me.
All right, Leah,
so
take it away.
We all did it, but theoretically I was on point, even though I think I was the last one to show up that evening. Sorry, guys. Oof.
No,
Brianna. Leading from behind,
Brianna
that's where I'm at today.
So what is Savage Hall? Who's behind it? What's the deal with it? What is this thing?
So this is Dark Arcade Theater. It's a remote online murder mystery / LARP. It's a really neat combination using some really interesting technology. What we knew going into it was we needed a full group of 6 players, and we were told to gather and prepare ourselves for a 1940s style evening. The list of things we were meant to bring was pretty small, pretty accessible, things like keys and a cup, and we were encouraged to play dress up, along with providing or setting ourselves up with some backgrounds from Zoom that they provided for us. In case we didn't hit this earlier on, yeah, it's a Zoom game. It's remote.
So what's the story here? What is the vibe? Is this a murder mystery thing or what's going on?
It is. So there are a few different plots going on, and I felt this was pretty Inception-esque. Laura, Patrick, chime in if you guys have anything to say about this here.
Yeah, I would say also then to take even a further step back is that how we have found ourselves in London during the Blitz is that I'm going to use the word famous. Like there was a famed murder that happened at Savage Hall, and it's remained a mystery to today here in 2021. And then what occurs is that a scientist has found a way through audio magic, essentially, to transport people back into the mindset and embody 6 primary characters who were involved or were the perpetrator or were just there that night, had their own agenda, what may, but were in the hall the night that happened. So the conceit is that you, through the magic of this new technology, are being subjected to becoming that person. And the only way to find out who the murderer was is that we will become those people and reenact those moments.
And the goal is because this character, this scientist, who was it? It was like Professor Gage, and she found these audio signals which indicated that the ghosts of these characters are trapped. They are still trapped in Savage Hall, and so our goal is to solve this murder mystery so that then those ghosts are essentially released from their confinement.
God, guys, I am so glad you were able to explain that part because it was I felt like they were doing backflips to get us into a place to explain why we were dealing with a lot of audio and why we were on Zoom. And that part didn't really hit for me, although it was sort of interesting. What really hit for me was the meat of the story when we finally got into our characters and got into 1940s London. Did any of you guys enjoy the selection process like I did?
Of like how we just were kind of randomly assigned roles?
Oh, I choose to think that it wasn't randomly assigned, that our host observed us closely for half an hour and decided that I was an intriguing countess.
Well, I almost think that goes without saying, frankly. No, I think I will say that I think, and I think that's one of the key really good takeaways of this experience with Savage Hall was our game master, our host, our kind of narrative guide through the journey and what we're doing, did a phenomenal job in this experience. They really help set tone. They really help guide us into expectations, and they really kind of help guided the experience. And I found that was invaluable. So like in many ways, like they were serving as, a disembodied but a trustworthy voice in the narrative.
Yes, they were the assistant. The game master was the assistant to this professor.
Right, but very important in a mystery to have someone that we all can listen to and what they say is fact. So which I feel is a trapping of murder mysteries, is that you don't know who to trust. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, so it sounds like a bit of a Watson character in some sense, but like, so you had 2 actors you were dealing with, more actors, like you were embodying characters. What's the setup here?
No, I think there's a no plus there. Because
there's a no plus. Yeah, go.
There is.
Take it away, Leah. Yeah.
You don't want to jump in on that? Okay.
No, I'm happy to. But it was interesting how, because I do think we had a group discussion afterwards, and both Leah and Patrick are more experienced LARPers compared to me. And so I do think there's some interesting ways that this was configured that both really supported this experience, and other aspects of the framework that I think were frustrating to all of us, regardless of our LARP experience. And so this sort of Watson character, the game master, what was frustrating for me was that that was the only other live kind of quote unquote actor. There was also a pre-recorded performance that was the only other performance that we didn't embody. That was the only other, what is it? Non-playing character, NPC?
Yeah.
So there was a kind of vacillation between the game master, who's the guise is that he's the assistant to this professor, but it wasn't completely in world. It kind of vacillated a little bit. I did not love that.
And I'm going to take a step back here really quick and explain kind of the structure in a little bit of detail while avoiding spoilers, in the sense that, so you're the subjects who through the science embody these people. And as you are sitting wherever you are, because as this is done on Zoom and your 5 other players or wherever they are, there is audio being pumped into everyone's headphones, but it is not the same audio. Typically, it is your character's internal monologue to either help provide context or help set the stage or help provide clues of key observations. So
you're getting like the stream of consciousness of a character.
Correct.
Yes.
So what happens is it's basically, it's in 5 acts or close to it. Each act starts with that character's voice talking to you, that your character is informing you of where you kind of are, what your emotions are, things to be mindful, and then kind of gives you, the micro and the macro, like, objectives, the scene objectives as an actor of what you want to try to accomplish. And then we essentially get free time, sometimes where it's all 6 of us together. Sometimes it was just 1 or 2 of us in a Zoom breakout room, where then we get to do LARP. We get to do LARP. we LARP in that sense, and we perform the scene as we see fit, whether we are conveying information. Oh yeah.
better that you get to do LARP than you're forced to do LARP.
Well, yes, so that's a strength here too. Is that what I really liked in that audio stuff was that it was always very clear what my intention was or could be and things like that. So I think that's where.
So did it feel like side coaching here? Because like I gotta say, like what y'all are describing actually feels, because particularly the way you describe it, it's like, let's take a step back. Like I feel like we've taken like so many steps back from what the thing is that we have like left the building, down at the cafe and kind of say, well, there's this thing we were doing over here, and like that there's a lot of.
You're not wrong.
Yeah,
you're not wrong, and I think that's very much where we came out of it. Was like, man, the core of this show, of the gameplay, is really beautiful and really well done. I wish it didn't have all of these outer layers surrounding it, because it really made you feel a bit removed and made it very hard for me, at least, to immerse myself in my character.
Yeah, because like I'm wondering, like the audio could function as like, your conscience, or like could help you like pull yourself more in, but it sounds like there's maybe things getting in the way. I don't know.
I think that's true, and I think the things that are getting in the way are the cadence, the moving back and forth between our really attentive, wonderful game master and the audio and our free play, and you kind of bounce around enough that it's a bit hard to find a real groove for play acting.
Yeah.
That said, I want to extol the virtues of the audio internal monologue that Dark Arcade has put together for this. One, the audio quality was phenomenal.
Yes.
It really brought me there. And I would go back and listen to that any day.
Because there was also sound effects and additional like mood setting things. It just wasn't a voiceover. Like they really went above and beyond with
and
the audio.
the writing and the performances, I thought, were excellent.
Agreed.
I completely agree. And then from a LARP standpoint, so number 2, I really was fascinated by this idea of really not getting any sort of character sheet. So all of the information I was getting about this character was happening in real time.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I was feeling what Aggie was feeling, and I got to hear her voice, which I hadn't realized was going to be so transformative as a character. Not having to come up with the voice on my own, I just felt like I knew so much about who this person was.
That reminds me a bit of playing, and Patrick, you've played it too, Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. There's the High Republic section where you're playing this character, Addie Sun Z.
Yes.
And you get Addie's voice. And I guess this is also something that happens in Half-Life Alyx, which I don't like head crabs, so I own it, but I haven't played it yet. Because I really don't want to encounter head crabs in VR. That just sounds fucking terrifying. And I didn't like him anyway. So now I'm thinking about head crabs I shouldn't be thinking about. But the point being that hearing the voice, the first time I heard the voice of Addie, I suddenly found my body shifting. Like I was no longer being Noah, I was being Addie, and I was trying to match my physicality to the voice I was hearing in my head that was quote unquote mine. Of course, I'm a crazy weird actor person, so of course I'm going to do something like this. But
No, you are exactly right.
Well, I know I'm exactly right. No.
Why would you, Leah?
Okay,
why would you do that? Now it's on tape, even.
Hold on, let me take a step back here. You are middlingly right, Noah.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Leah, for being on the show. No.
Well, and and on that note, I think what makes Savage Hall something worthwhile to check out is that I'm sure we've all done it or have seen them or aware of them. The murder mystery in a box, right? Mm-hmm. Where you get your friends together for dinner and everyone gets a little booklet and they flip through it accordingly. And like the tape or the timer goes off and that's when you know to turn the page and stuff like that. Like this was the best possible version of that in all the right ways. Unfortunately, that genre has those issues of like, sometimes those instructions are really kind of blocky. Sometimes the details, it's really easy to miss an important detail that you should be conveying to your other players and things like that. Right. Mm-hmm. Like any pitfalls that Savage Hall experienced in, I think the LARP aspect and the role playing of it happens to all of the things in these genres.
They're endemic to the form. Yeah,
exactly. And I think, and so I do want to, in their defense, I think that's a problem there. But then of course, what makes that genre so fun and why people do these kind of things is that, and very fortunately with our group, is that you get the right people together and it's magic. Like truly, like I sometimes, I luckily played it personally. I luckily played a character who kind of had a lower stakes objective. They're kind of like trying to stay hidden, trying like my role was to try to avoid confrontation. So I sometimes frankly just got caught up in some really fantastic performances from my fellow audience members, being the people I know and work with.
And
Leah,
that's where actually I would jump in to offer, because one perspective that I do have that's different from Patrick and Leah is that I was the murderer. And again, not having as much LARP experience specifically with this genre, I found it really exhausting. I was delighted by our team. And again, all of the accolades that we have now shown a spotlight on for Dark Arcade and for Savage Hall, I completely agree with. I will say, though, that this was, so again, maybe this is more indicative of the genre and areas where this could be refined and developed further. But I really felt like I didn't have as much of a chance to really delight in how wonderful our group was. It felt like from the jump, this was a very difficult task for me in this role.
So
based
you
on the
knew from jump
I
that
knew
you were the killer.
I knew very, very early on, and maybe not from the jump, but from very early on. And I really felt like this was one area where I did want the writing to be beefed up maybe a little bit more. To me, it actually seemed, and I'd be curious to hear what Patrick and Leah think about this. To me, it seemed actually very obvious from early on that it was me, that it was my character. And so it just was a very lengthy, labored process that I wish I could have enjoyed a little. I mean, I committed fully, but I wish I could have enjoyed it a little bit more.
And I hear all that, and I think for the first time out, that's always difficult. But with this genre, with the murder mystery dinner party box type things, being the murderer is always a thankless job. And and to your point, like I think you're always guaranteed to kind of not have fun to a certain point. I don't know about any other people's experiences, but if you're not prepared for that, or if you're not like with the right group or in the right mindset, it's a slog.
It's fascinating because like I've LARPed a ton in my day. Like I ran 2 vampire LARPs in college, not simultaneously because I'm not an Malkavian, but I that was a joke for one person in the group.
Yeah, deep cuts. I appreciated it.
I knew you would. That said, I've never done a murder mystery dinner theater thing or murder mystery in a box, and every time someone describes them, like I just feel like I would bounce off it so hard because of things like that. Like the idea of like,
But
well,
Patrick,
one person's gonna be the killer, and boy, they're not gonna have much fun. And I'm just like, well, if I'm gonna do all the work and not get the reward of being the game master and get to play 17 different characters, which is the joy of being the antagonist in a role playing situation from my point of view, then like I don't see the appeal. Maybe I'll go to my grave having never done one.
I mean, Patrick made a good point that you go in with your group. They don't sell individual tickets. You have to go in with the same group of people. So, like, you're bound to at least be on the same page and the same energy wavelength. And also, Laura. Hey, Laura.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Laura.
Oh,
you were fantastic. I think one thing that they do really nicely, though, is all of the characters have something they're trying to hide. So, like, we are all being a little bit shifty from a narrative point of view. But you're not wrong. I think even as a non-killer character, I was tired by the end. And I think a lot of that came down to being a bit stressed out about whether or not I was sharing the right information so that my fellow players could have a good game, which I think is the thing that you don't always get in LARP. Like in LARP, when you're a little more freeform, you can wing it and go and everyone's going to find their own story. Here, there's a story that's laid out and you're sort of trying to fulfill the needs of the brief, and that was a little bit hard for me.
And I will say, like, it works on the other end too, because I see a inexperienced group of people who are just in it to like have some fun, let's have a few drinks, let's get on a Zoom call, let's do something a little different than we've been doing for the past 2 years. And like people who just are just casually in it to like do some funny voices and be like, I think it was you, good sir. I think are going to have a delightful time too, in the sense, you know?
Yeah, Leah made a great point after we finished and we did sort of a little team debrief the night of. And I thought Leah made a great point around how we did all take it very seriously. And we almost maybe took it a little too seriously. I mean, our group was fantastic and again, fully committed and was delightful. It was such a pleasure. But I think there's validity to that.
Tears.
Yes.
Oh man.
Did any of you get a chance to play? Because I cannot remember if I can't even remember if we reviewed this or had a chance to review it. I Swing, You Swing, a swinging 70s mystery game. Did
Blake
do that
did,
one?
who did do Savage Hall and is not here.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because that one feels like they approach, you know, the idea of the whodunit with like a totally different what they done did. So I feel like maybe that also like the stakes, the tone. Also, I'm very happy. Like I just Googled swinging paternity LARP, and our link to it was the first thing that appeared because I was trying to remember the name.
Wow.
And it worked. It worked.
And that's just synergy you cannot buy.
You can't.
Only through swinging.
Only through swinging. Swinging paternity LARP. I mean, I'm glad it worked. So yeah. Well, sounds like maybe like tossing the team back in, but to go do something ridiculous might be because I'm wondering if is it the form or if it is the content that this energy drain kind of came through. But,
I mean, the content I think could be adjusted for sure, but I believe it's more form.
Okay. All right.
I agree. And final plug for this. I think if you're a person who's maybe on the edge of immersive, maybe you're a little bit interested in LARP or role playing, but you really don't have a group or you don't feel like you know what you're doing, this is a really good place to dip your toes in the water. You can experience a lot of the fun of role play and LARP without having to deal with complicated character sheets or any of that jazz.
Yeah, full agree.
All right. Well, that sounds pretty good. That, again, is Savage Hall. It is booking now, and the fastest way to do that is just go over to everythingimmersive.com, type in Savage Hall, and we'll send you on your merry way. We are going to take a quick technical pause because we're going to let Laura jump out of the recording because when we jump over into the next phase, which will happen instantaneously for everyone listening to the podcast, we're going to start talking Arcane, and Laura's going on Saturday, and Patrick and Leah are bajillion miles away from it, so they can ask questions without worry about getting spoiled. So Laura, thank you for your service as the murderess of Savage Hall.
Always a pleasure.
All right, now we're back for part 2, and we are going to start talking about Secret Cinema's production of Arcane, Enter the Undercity, based off of Arcane, League of Legends, a series by Riot Games on Netflix. I had to do it that way. Jen, do you want to take a crack at explaining what this show is?
I'm sure.
Yeah, go for it.
You know, I'll start it, and you can probably pitch in as you see fit. But essentially, we are visiting the Undercity, which is the more cyberpunk world element of the Arcane show world. There is a top side, which is full of, you know, upper class folk and steampunk innovations, and the Undercity is more of a cyberpunk slums, high tech, low life type setting. So we enter that realm, and there are enforcers that are clearly already seeking trouble as we are entering the city. And in this world, it feels kind of like an open world. There are many different NPCs that offer you quests, and then there are 2 main cutscenes, I would say, that happen right at the middle and right at the end.
And there's an intro cutscene too, and I love that we're calling it a cutscene because that's exactly what these are.
intro rave, I will say. And the whole experience is about 2 hours, and you have a lot of freedom to pursue whatever storyline you want to uncover. And there's also, you know, a bar and whatnot for refreshments, like, you know, to nod to the last drop, which is a bar fixture that you see in the game itself. I mean, sorry, in the show itself. There we go.
There are a lot of layers here. Like there's a whole
Mhm.
layer to this. Like Riot's been working on this transmedia domination of the world for
Oh,
about 5
absolutely.
years now, and this is kind of
Hmm.
the culmination. I believe
Yeah.
your Facebook status earlier was that you have the theme song of Arcane stuck in your head, and I responded to a lyric you quoted with the next lyric because stuck in my
Yes.
head too.
Oh
Well,
my God.
on that note, really quick. So,
Hmm.
how how well do I need to know the game and or the show? Like, is that a big boom? Like, before we even get into it, should everyone, if they can, see the show first and then they would go see this? Is like that the perfect situation that needs to occur?
You know, I go ahead.
Oh, I would say you don't need to play the game.
Amen.
Like I knew nothing of the game
Yeah.
other than Riot, other than it's existed for 10 years and like they create hybrid K-pop American pop bands using the characters as if the characters were the gorillas, right? Like
Yes.
that's what I knew about it. And um and and other things about like the companies involved, right? Because of tech reporter status. But watching at least the first episode of the series, and I honestly think the first 3 episodes, because the show is set in between the first arc, which is the first 3 episodes, and the second arc, which is it's literally set basically, on the first on episode 4 functionally, if you know, when they fudge a little bit, but that's sort of when the show the Secret Cinema show is set.
Mm.
But I think the key thing is if you don't like the world and don't like the characters you meet in that animated series, if you don't like the tone and the vibe and everything, you're not going to like the stage show. And so that like saves you $70 to $140. But if you do like the show, there are so many Easter eggs embedded,
Mm.
and like I didn't know going in that we were going to start meeting characters from the show from jump. Like even before we were brought in, like I was on a press track, so like I was being shunted over to go hang out with the big bads right from the start. And the first person who comes out to meet us, like they say like, oh yeah, like you wait here and Savika will come get you. And I'm like, wait, that's a character from the what, really? And then an actress comes up and like she's channeling that character, and then the first thing that happens as before we're allowed in is like the person playing the sheriff of Piltover, like kind of one of the middle level antagonists, like this corrupt cop comes up and addresses us all. And like what was scary was like he looked like the character, he sounded like the character. It was like, oh my god, it's the guy from the show, but he's a human and not animated. And so I was really just sort of floored by the talent they've managed to pop up on this one. But I don't know, like Jen, you had encountered the show at least, right?
So honestly, I had not even started the show before I saw the live show. I was invited because one of my friends did the audio for for the show, and so I was going in completely with fresh eyes, and I was still blown away, honestly, because they did such a good job of establishing tone, as you said. And it reminded me a lot of just the open world video games that I'm very used to, you know. um, Cyberpunk and sci-fi are very familiar to me, so it was nice to see that happening in real time. I think I definitely got a different show than you did, Noah, because I don't think I was ushered to the same character that you mentioned. For my show, it was very much an open world. It was very much sandbox. You get to pick and go in with whatever you feel interested in. And so me and Gilly, actually, the people who made the person who made Oblivious with me, as you recall, we actually approached so many different NPCs, giving so many new quests that we couldn't finish them all by the end of the 2-hour period, which is, I think, the only tragedy of this performance.
So
But
break down
yeah.
what a quest would be, because
Yeah.
you did a number of these, and I'm gonna tell you, spoiler alert, I did none of them and still had a blast. But like, tell us about this. This is the main thing I wanted to hear from you, because like
Sure.
I don't know what's going on in this show, half of it.
Yeah. So I think like our me and Gilly's gamer initiative senses kind of kicked in, so we just went immediately to talk to characters that were roaming about the space, and it turns out that each and every one of them has like a position and a stake in the grand narrative. And so we went up to somebody who directed us towards Rennie, who wanted to employ us through the sledge runners, and we were supposed to discover how to break into Silco's lodge, and then we walked up to somebody else and they said they wanted to hire us for Silco, and we walked up to somebody else and they were saying, oh, have you found any shimmer yet? It seemed like a lot of the B quests were formulated around finding shimmer. Now that was
Yes.
my only kind of gripe with the tale, because I knew that shimmer was a very valuable resource, but they didn't really give any directives as to how to locate them. So by asking around, you actually ended up opening up more quests rather than gaining more information on how to progress in finding shimmer. And
That sounds very
yeah,
much like an open
yes,
video game. Like, I'm trying to complete
exactly.
this one quest. Would you like more? Oh, you want a quest? No, I've got a quest. Like, oh, here's 4 more quests. It's
Yeah.
like, oh God.
I was really happy though that I actually stumbled upon the main quest and was able to complete that. So the main quest for me, in my opinion, was that we got employed by this person named Nova, who was running this dual agent deal for Silco. And she gave us a directive to go to the bar. And we asked for somebody at the bar who gave us a contract. And we were to show Silco the contract, but we needed a password. So we used a password to get through the main security guard in the lobby so that we could enter this mezzanine secret doorway and go down into the pit and find Silco kind of preaching bombastically in his kind of sultry, cruel way to a small group of people. He takes our contract and then he tells us to go out in the world and to find his minions and whatnot. So we go find another agent who we say we are looking for Jinx, and they smile, leading us into the room where Jinx is being held. Now, I do believe for that evening, me and my friend were the first ones to enter the Jinx private space, which essentially is something akin to the weird wind tunnel mechanic chrome thing that she dwells in for the majority of when you first meet her character post time jump. But
In the show, in the cartoon.
in the
Yeah.
show, in
Yeah.
the show. So that room was very interesting because that moved strictly into escape room territory. So there were many sequences with levers on the walls, and each lever had a particular combination to light up a series of lights in the center. And the more purple lights you could light up, the more, it was assumed that we could free Jinx. So the actor sat all the way up top and was encouraging us verbally in her typical maniacal manner. And I was clearly the overthinker because, I've worked in escape room games and I've done a lot of them. So I was just like, okay, great. Well, this line is the line this way and this light is this color. Therefore, 1, 3, and 6 must be correct. And she was like, no. You're overthinking it. Just keep trying the combinations. So it turns out it was kind of like a chaotic free-for-all until you found the right combinations. And there were about 10 series of those before this like really jarring trance light came on with like glow paint that ignited all along the walls. And there were riddles that we had to crack. So we solved the riddle and she was freed. And that was the end of that private scene.
Oh wow.
And Jinx walked free. Yeah.
I had zero. So I spent the exact same amount of time in this experience as you did. And I didn't even know there was something that was escape room like, I think literally until you mentioned it on Facebook like 2 days later. And I
Yeah.
do not think of that as like a fault, because I was having so much fun just messing around with the characters, and kind of like we were given a mission very early on.
And was it the same mission that you all have? Like, is it, or do you each individually got a mission?
So there's a meta game in a sense,
Okay.
right? In that, like, over the course of the night, the idea is whichever crew winds up with the most shimmer wins. And you know, the idea is like you're trying to fight for the balance of power in the Undercity, and of course, you know, the house always wins. Like it's a rigged game, right? It's a metaphor for life, everybody. And so like you can kind of, if by leaning into that metagame at all, you can either play a particular line. Like we were given a mission of take these jugs of shimmer, and they've got these big gas canisters like that you'd find on the back of a Jeep, and they're just like painted a little sparkly. And it's like we were told take these across through the lanes. Don't get caught. If an enforcer sees you, drop it, walk away. Right? If someone if anyone calls you out on it, just walk away. So you got to hide it, right? You got to do your best to conceal it. And these are huge, right? I mean, you know, they're the size of your torso, right? You're not gonna.
Yeah.
It's hard.
They're
to
about a
hide.
gallon.
Yeah, they're a gallon, right? You know, like bigger than a gallon. I think they're 4 or 5 gallon jugs, right? You know, like they're big. Maybe 2 gallon jugs. Anyway, they're not small. Bigger than the gallon of milk for certain, right?
Yeah.
And you told us, and we were told specifically, take these to a particular woman, silver hair, dots on her face. And I was like, cool, gonna get that right. And we found a woman with silver hair and dots on her face and gave her the jugs. It was the wrong woman with silver hair and dots on her, which I quickly realized as soon as we were done with the transaction. Oh, yeah, Margot is supposed to go too. So I turned around to my crew and was like, oh, so I think we just had a small hiccup here, right? And like we instantly blew our mission, but then spent the rest of the night pretending that we didn't blow our mission. And that crew kind of dissolved quickly, but then we just went and got into individually got into more trouble. And so I just kind of bounced around, you know, running gossip back to the big bads, bantering with actors, getting a quest, kind of running off, doing it, having just kind of ridiculous emergent gameplay happen. And then like in the middle of the thing, like, you know, a rave breaks out, right? Because they've got a cutscene to do. And it was just a joy living that way for a bit and just living in that world for a couple hours.
Absolutely. I almost felt greedy because, you know, I had so many quests opened up, and yet I felt like I didn't have enough time to pursue them. And a lot of them were, you know, I felt that there were many different factions, as you had mentioned, all trying to vie for Shimmer. So there was no sense of, you know, who I should actually pick because I didn't know who to be loyal to. Neither did I actually know how to find the Shimmer. So it seemed to vary from person to person whether or not you actually happened upon Shimmer, because there was no clear directive as to how to locate it. So
yeah, there were I think there were different ways. I think there was there were puzzles to solve that could then unlock some. There was a trunk that was set up, but there was a lock mechanism, you know, and it was a shimmer stock, and that's where I got a jug to go take across to do a deal for information.
And how many? No, go ahead, Noah.
No, you.
Well, so then how many? So you talk about you guys were overloaded with quests and interactions. So in that sense, how many, whether you completed them or not, my first part of the question is, how many side quests did you feel you encountered?
At least 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was sent on one that was totally normal, and then I think they may have just BS'd 1 or 2 for me to go to.
Interesting.
which I was totally like, my favorite thing of the night was I think was just like the actor on her feet being like, okay, well, you know what I want you to do? I want you to go over to so and demand information about this. And so I did. And then he was like, okay, well, I'll do it, but only if you do this. And so I was like, all right. So then I went back to the original person. I was like, well, he wants me to betray you, but I'm not going to betray you. But I do need to take some shimmer over to him. And she was like, okay, sure, great. Here you go. Here's how to get the shimmer. And then I go, and then and then because I'm not supposed to get caught, I'm like acting like I've got, a back injury, and humped over, right? Making a lot of noise, being very obvious that I'm carrying the stuff because I'm handing it up. And then I go upstairs, and then I got to wait because like the corrupt cop is shaking down the person I'm supposed to talk about. So I just turn to some other people who are waiting for their turn to talk to somebody, and I start BSing with them in character, and they're kind of half in character, half not in character because I think they're a little more confused. And then I finally wait for Cross to get free, and then he goes, and one thing that kind of annoyed me was like he turned to some like other players and was like, should I do this deal? And they're just like, oh, well, you agreed to it already, so sure. That was the one thing I was a little annoyed of. There was a little bit too much of deference to like the people around, like, oh, let's include everybody. It's like, no, don't break the scene to like make everybody enjoy. But what was fun about that was that while he was doing that and while I got what I wanted, someone just swung by and stole the shimmer that I had brought. And I was like, oh, serves you right. And then I just left. And it was great. And was that part of the script? But because they have this like they have these character motivations that they're all just pursuing, you can have this emergent gameplay show up. Or maybe it was scripted as one of the options. I don't know. It could be either.
Not knowing has always been the thing that I hated most about that kind of play. Where like, man, I love that actors can get into it and have character motivations, but I want to feel like I'm leaving with a larger narrative behind me, and sometimes that sort of play can get in the way of that. Did you not feel that way at all?
No, because like the thing I was pursuing in that moment was information about one of the main characters, right? That was rooted in the character relationships. Right. So like, and that of course meant something to me because I know the show. Right. So the equivalent to like, take a Star Wars metaphor would be if Kylo Ren told me like, I need to find out about that girl. I need you to go ask Poe Dameron about that girl. Right. That's the kind of narrative I found myself in. I was like, oh, I need to go get information about the main character of the show, voiced by Haley Stansfeld in the series, from this minor character I don't know about, and I'm being told to do that by this other character who I know fights her. So cool, right? Like I'm in the middle of the drama, but I don't know if I had no context for those characters, if any of that would have hit the same way, other than the dynamics of this actor knows what they want, and they're using me as a cat's paw to get what they want. And that's often enough for me to vibe in the scene.
And Jen, I was wondering and on that note, with the site, you completed this main mission. Was that the end of it, where you then shown like, well, great, thanks for stopping by. Okay, make sure to watch the show. Please leave. Or were you then just released back into the world at large to do as you see fit?
We were released back into the world at large. I definitely want to bump what Leah just explained, because that was actually something that I bumped up against as well. Going in with no context, it definitely seemed like it was self-propulsion throughout most of the thing, so it was really exciting to finally be pushed into the main quest and to complete something. And it definitely did feel deflating to then be pushed back into status quo, So I, like Noah, also did take on some character traits, while we were trying to get some more information from NPCs. We were pretending to be like beverage carriers because they were like, use your acting skills. And we were like, okay, great. Yeah, we're bringing the drinks for the party. And I even said that in front of Silco, I was like, we're bringing the drinks for the party. And he's like, I don't see any drinks. Well, great. But yeah, it definitely felt like it peaked out at a certain level, because past that point, characters knew what their motivations were, but they definitely were trying to bat you around into another storyline, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I could see what they were doing. Like, if you went up to a character and you didn't have a clear purpose or drive or motivation to do so, they'd usually try to, you know, absorb you in and kind of adopt you and then send you along your way so that you have something to do. But the thing I kept bumping up against was the Shimmer quest, because we kept going to person after person who kept requesting for Shimmer, and we couldn't really find where the Shimmer was. So that, you know, that definitely was something that I struggled with.
Yeah, I think not so, because so much of the meta was, you know, around this, and again, meaninglessly around it, right? Like, it was
Right.
just MacGuffin, right? They might as
Mhm,
well have called
mhm.
it like, well, you got to go down to the MacGuffin plant and fill up the bottles with Shimmer. It's like, okay, I know what we're here to do. But
Mhm.
like, you know, there was a stack of it that we were told to go take, and then I watched people like getting it, but I literally had no sense of like where it was coming from. And if I
Yeah,
hadn't
yeah,
been, put onto certain tasks, I probably would not have interacted with it at all. I think that's
definitely.
one of the
Mhm.
weak points about it. But then from the level of like, there's the build, I mean, it's definitely one of those things that rewards curiosity, rewards that propulsion,
Mhm.
right? Like, you got to be here to play. But
Yeah.
it is sort of funny because there is the whole other line where it's like there's a functioning bar in there,
Mhm.
so like, I walked in and I had a token and I'm like, oh, Johnny Walker Black, please. And so I was like down in whiskey and, tried the churros. Don't have the churros. They're not good, but the sausages look pretty good. I should have had the sausage, but I wasn't hungry. And like, there's people just kind of vibing, and it's not so clean as, oh, you'll never have a dull moment, but
Mhm.
it's kind of the closest I've seen to someone making like a temporary larp theme park
Yeah,
pop up.
Everything
yeah.
you're saying is reminding me of that South by South Westworld activation from a few years ago. I mean, it sounds like
Mm,
all the mechanics are there, but I think what that suffered from for me was the fact that it was such a short duration. If I could have gone back multiple times, I think all of the things that I experienced as things to bump up against would have been features instead of bugs. So,
Mhm.
what's the runtime for this? How long is it playing?
the run, sadly, is only through the 19th of this month. It is December 1st when we're recording
No.
this. And that has everything to do with the fact that, this is being staged on a sound stage somewhere in South LA. And there's a film shoot coming in,
Mm.
and they're going to make a lot more money on the film shoot than they are on this activation. And the kind of tragedy, I was talking with one of the core creators of this, like right after the show, and he noted like, oh yeah, like this is a lot more gamified than the stuff that you've normally done. So if people have done Secret Cinema, like this is a lot more gamified according to them. And then um, they had half the usual time they have to rehearse it.
Oh,
Um,
really?
but the actors were just doing such a good job,
They were
and really,
phenomenal.
yeah. And so, and so we had this long conversation just about the talent pool in Los Angeles and how impressive it is. And sort of the shame of it all is that, it's just hard. It's very hard to secure and get space permitted for this kind of work in LA, which is a crying shame because all the fabrication talent is here, all the performing talent is here, reams of the design talent is here, but securing the space, because either the premium that studio space goes for, or the way in which LA just doesn't want to deal with permits for these kinds of pop-up events. So it's a real, it sucks. It's one of the things that I hate about living here, is that we have all this potential, and no go. I will
And
say,
Yeah.
to note on COVID stuff. People were being very, very, very good about their masks, save for when like they were eating or drinking. It's well over like a week and a half since I've been. Everyone had to like show their vaccination to get in because that's how we roll in Los Angeles now. And I haven't heard of any incidents coming through. I mean, I know we're living in the endemic part of a pandemic, and so it's always like a uh, calculated risks all the way around. But it's like felt as secure as you could given all of the circumstances. I don't know if that was your experience too, Jen.
I believe so. It was also interesting that they sealed off our cell phones. They were not allowing us to film or post about it or take photos whatsoever. They ask you to put your phone in this secured bag where you can't take it out and use it at all. So actually, that helped add to my experience. I feel like, because if everybody was on their phones filming, I think they wouldn't have been fully immersed or felt as encouraged to pursue these quest lines the way they would.
Did they do the thing that they did the night I was at, which is they let us take them out at the end, or did they not do that for y'all?
I don't think they did that for us.
Okay,
No.
probably like preview
Might
nights
be
they were doing that.
yeah,
Yeah,
different for press maybe.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the night I went, I know there were a lot of rioters, people from Riot Games who were there.
Mm-hmm.
I know because like someone came into Silco's room when I was in there and they started like BSing with Silco and like trying to like run their own gambit, and Silco wasn't having it, and I was like mocking that person and being like, I don't think he knows where he is, boss. And then later on I was told that was one of the head writers of Riot Games. So that was a really lovely, beautiful moment. And again, just the meta of it all. But just fun.
Yeah, it was a beautiful world. I mean, they had so many levels to play on. They had so many different rooms and nooks and crannies and characters just waiting for you to talk to them.
And not a very big space, right?
Not too big of a
Yeah.
space, but so much playing space within a small space.
Yeah.
And like, I just bemoan the fact that it was only 2 hours because like I wanted to solve every single quest. I'm a completionist. Like I've done like over 200 hours on Horizon Zero Dawn. Like,
Oh my
what am I
God.
going to do here? Like,
That's how they get you though. I mean, Todd Martin in his review said the same thing. Was like he would gladly go back and do another track. And I really don't think of that. I think of that as like, a feature and not a bug of this stuff. Like if you go to an immersive piece, I mean, that's how they get you with Sleep No More, right?
Yeah.
The legend is like it takes 8 times to see everything,
if that,
If that.
sometimes even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any questions or from Patrick and Leah about what we did, or shall we open this up for the move us on into the next phase of the whole deal?
Yeah, I've got a question. Why can't I go see it right now?
That is a good question. They've done all the creative now, and this seems to have been the show's a hit. The show is a global hit.
100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, and it is the number one television series. So it's a number one television series on Netflix around the world. It's not the number one television series here, but that's because like America's weird. But like after Squid Game, it was Arcane. And so I have no insider knowledge. I don't know anything about, any kind of plan for them to do more with this, but I would be kind of shocked if they didn't decide to bring this back ahead of season 2, because that's the weird thing about this is that they dropped this show like the week that the third arc of episodes of the series dropped, which itself was a weird thing for Netflix because they usually get a whole binge drop, but they dropped it as 3 arcs. So that also gave it the show time to build word of mouth. And then the series dropped, this event dropped. And I think a lot of people didn't know what it was going to be or what it was, had no context for the cartoon. And now there's this love of this thing, and people are like, what do you mean I can go see the show? And I think that's hopefully having a positive impact. And has to be some incentive for them to like be, hey, what about remounting this before season 2, but like maybe doing it in a few markets instead of just one.
Yeah, New York is waiting. Come on out, guys.
Yeah.
Well, and then I have a quick question, because in this kind of genre with the sandbox immersive, speaking of Sleep No More and things like that, there's the road not taken. Were there any obvious things that, like, you're in the midst of doing a quest, or you see someone, but you get caught up in something else? What's the thing, like, I guess that maybe for those who might be listening, who are able to listen and go, uh, uh, later or whatever, or don't mind the spoilers, of like, what's the thing that you wish you did in this experience that you didn't get a chance to, just solely because you were caught up in something else, for the both of you?
Jen?
Yeah, I definitely feel like if I were to go next time, I would definitely inquire further and choose a group to be loyal to so that I could deliver Shimmer to them and see how the characters change in response to that. I was going to mention too that the whole Shimmer thing reminds me of, escape room games when you go in a large group and maybe you don't recognize everybody in your party, and if somebody is onto something, then there's like a group think that happens where everyone swarms to the location, and suddenly it becomes more about like fulfilling the time constraint of like figuring the thing out, and it kind of like dissolves the narrative purpose of having done it,
Mm.
like I saw certain people going up towards places where others had extracted Shimmer from and were like figuring out the mechanism instead of like taking a quest from somebody and yada yada. So, yeah, the next time, if I could go, I would probably, um, you know, try to play it straight and steal Shimmer the right way.
Now that I know there's like a whole escape room thing with like a room with Jinx, I would be like, oh, I need to go do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, now that I know
Mm-hmm.
it exists, like I would try to find these hidden rooms and see how many, try definitely to do that one, and just, yeah, like try and figure out like how can I get on that particular quest. I also know that like Todd wound up being like basically detailed to Vi and was running around and helping Vi out, and I'm like, oh shit, like I didn't know you could do that. So yeah, I would try and go for some of the other main characters and see what the show looks like when you're trying to like be part of their squads. But who knows how hard or easy that is. Like that's the one thing I kind
Right,
of worry that
right.
like you wouldn't be able to like easily
Yeah, it could be totally random too. Like, you just
exactly.
like
Mhm.
you just make eye contact with the performer and they pick you, and that's why you're going to be hanging out with them for the next 2 hours for sure. But
Yeah.
I was just kind of curious in that sense. I guess I was also trying to mine out, like, and it's very clear, but like make it also explicit, like how much there was to do. That there are things that you guys are kind of like, oh, I'm like kind of drooling over the fact that I didn't get a chance to do this, right? Like, that's such a
Mhm.
kind of impressive feat for essentially what is arguably just a pop up.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. No doubt. All right. On that note, it's 6 o'clock. Time to wrap this up. Folks, thank you for sticking around for the live. We're gonna drop into live chat with those who are here in the Discord with us. So feel free to drop into the cafe where we will turn our microphones back on and be able to listen to each other. Patrick and I will discuss really quickly in the Zencaster in a moment about how we're going to take care of pick of the week stuff. And then, thank you all. As we noted, Kevin and Laura are going to be checking it out, Arcane out this weekend, and we're going to record a special section with them next week. We will also be doing a special, I think at a special time, we've got another Secret Cinema event that a bunch of the crew is going to go to on next Wednesday and then spill out into here. There is a activation the Secret Cinema is doing online for Ghostbusters. I believe this is called the Gates of Gozer. And we're going to check that out. And then the crew's going to talk their instantaneous reactions. And then that episode of the podcast that week will have the section with Laura and Kevin talking more Arcane. We'll see if they have radically different experiences or hate it or something. And the whole team, fresh off an experience and comparing notes, always a dangerous proposition with this crew. For the review crew, I'm Noah Nelson, and we'll catch you soon.